Well, it could be in one of the offices. I would hope they communicate. I hope it'd be nice if they all, because it's my fault if I left it. There's a tendency for me to talk to students after the hour, and I sometimes leave, and it's very possible that I could leave it here. There's nothing unusual about that. I've left many things.
Yes, Dave.
I left my house once, and I knew where I was going.
Where am I going?
All right, so what I'm going to do, as much as this doesn't sound like I'm winging it, I'm going to draw a relationship to what it is that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. By the way, this is it. Next week, she will be back.
Right.
And I found this to be a very pleasant experience, and I enjoyed it. So anytime she needs time.
And we did too.
Well, thank you. Look.
Is it chocolate?
What is this, a candy store? What is this? Is it chocolate? Why don't you bring out the coffee and the bagels?
You want it.
All right, so here we go. What I'm going to do is those of you who've taken some of my courses, other courses, some of you have been around in some of the other courses, which is great. I'm going to draw a relationship to, as we do with theater and television and show business. Richard Rogers, of course, we all know. These were New York Jewish people who he was very much what you can call a genius in my book. We can call people geniuses with the body of work that they have done. We don't have to go looking like investigators. How do you determine who's a genius and who's not? Well, we do. You, me, we do, because we hear and look and listen, and we walk away with feelings of, this was unbelievable. How can a person be, Richard Rogers, Bernstein.
How about Albert Einstein?
Albert Einstein. But nobody ever see, it's funny, nobody ever said Albert Einstein. It's Einstein. So Bernstein. 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. That's how I look at it. And if anybody wants to make a big deal about it, you'll see me out in the parking lot. And I'll drive away like everybody else. All right, so... Okay, so now we gotta get serious, because this is being filmed for our armed forces. I appreciate, by the way, I appreciate you doing this.
Hey.
I've been on television before, but this is very special because it's all of you, and we're gonna, take a look at this
But we
later.
never get to see it.
Yes, you will.
It's on YouTube now or Facebook?
YouTube, on a computer?
Go to Facebook.
Okay, well, maybe you can share with someone else.
Why don't we look it up on YouTube?
Are you on Facebook at all?
Yes.
For those that are on Facebook, they could look up my name, Michael Gecht,
Michael Gecht.
G-E-C-H-T, that's how you spell my last name, and just, I think it's gotta be like the third one, you
And
know?
he'll direct you to,
Okay?
okay?
And
So
you'll see
here we go.
the thing, I think it's called Entertainers of the 30s and 40s.
We talked about the entertainers of the 30s and 40s. And
Same thing, Michael
actually,
Gecht.
we talked about the 50s.
With my
60s.
child.
I'm reading a book now, which is very, I should have brought the book, but, Dorothy Dandridge. She was not Jewish.
I love Dorothy.
But the story is so similar to so many of the great stars
Michael.
of the 50s. Very attractive, beautiful woman who could do it all. She could sing, dance, and ran into some hard times based on they wanted to put her in roles that would fit her color, her background. And for a while, okay, she was willing to do that, but she felt she could do more. She pushed the envelope. And there's nothing wrong with pushing the envelope, but sometimes in Hollywood in the 50s, cool it, because you make more enemies than friends, which has always been the case for show business people during the time during our time when we were young and kids. There's so many stories, and we talked about the changing of names last week or a couple of weeks ago, simply because, yes.
She was married to a very famous dancer,
One of the
Nicholas brothers, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes. But unfortunately, and it was a wonderful relationship, but it ended very quickly.
I don't know what happened.
Well, it ended because creative differences, I guess that's what you could call it.
And I think she had a child.
And she had a child, and she wanted to just do some other things, and one thing led to another. Relationships were not going well, and she just got into the drug scene a little. But not heroin, but more popping pills, and
Cocaine.
possibly, yeah. Because the big band, a lot of the bands, a lot of the musicians, even today, but more so years ago, somehow got into that community. They, you could say the creative people took drugs. I guess that's true, but people who are not creative, I know, who've taken drugs. Yes?
I remember the name Sam Levinson.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it just came to mind.
It just came to mind. But how does that relate to, that's perfectly okay. That's what I like about this play. I was gonna say, did Sam take drugs?
No.
I know, he smoked.
He was married to Dorothy Day.
He was
He was
not.
married to Dorothy. See, another state heard from.
Clown.
Another,
He
but,
was a teacher, he was so funny.
oh, I know, I wanna just tell you this as it relates to the course. And it's not about me, but it just happens to be an experience that I'll never forget. We went up to the Nevele Country Club. My father belonged to the Teamsters Union. Right away you're saying, oh yeah, it was a roughneck. No, he drove a car and a truck for a business, White Rose Coffee and Tea. And they wanted all of their route salesmen, to, I cover all the bases, route salesmen, route salesmen. They wanted all of them to be able to drive a car and also once in a while make a delivery in a little truck. And you had to join the Teamsters Union. He's not gonna fight City Hall, join the Teamsters Union. So one of the group of Teamsters he belonged to had this wonderful weekend at the Nevele. You know, you talk about money, they had money. And he came home one day and he said to my mother, we're gonna take the kids. The only one we're not gonna take is my mother's mother because she had to stay home. They couldn't take everybody. But, so we had 4 people, my mother, my father, my sister, myself, and we went up to the Nevele. And we had a great time. And who's skating on the ice skating rink but Sam Levinson with his daughter. And he was appearing, that was his, you know, so you were here on stage and then you enjoy the festivities or the whatever's going on at the Nevele. In those days, it was like all the other clubs. So my father went over to him, and he's not one to, my father was not shy, but he wasn't gonna be a pain in the neck. And he said, geez, I enjoy every time you're on Ed Sullivan, I mean, you make it a point, and the whole thing, wouldn't you know it, they exchanged names of people they knew in Brooklyn, and one was a relative. So how about them apples?
That's
Tilden,
right.
I think.
Who?
Sam Levinson was a teacher in Tilden High School.
Yes, that's true, he started out as a teacher. That was his backstory. He was a teacher and became a comedian, and used a lot of the material, which I could too as a teacher, real stuff that happens as a teacher, and it's very funny. Not at the expense of the student, but sometimes it can be very funny. Go.
I think you once told a story, and I can't tell it as funny as you about Sam Levinson. I don't know where I heard it. This Italian kid was in the class and he wasn't very bright. And something happened. He told a story. And
No,
he said,
laughing, it's very,
and he
it's
said
already
a
funny.
big gazin, whatever the guy said. It was a funny story, but I can't say it as funny as I know.
Okay, that's okay, so he used an expression
A Jewish expression
to an
in the
Italian kid,
classroom.
right?
And the kid was like, not a good student, but I can't tell the story the way I heard it. It was just hysterical.
But his storytelling was great, and he would even laugh at his own stuff, which made you feel comfortable. You know,
He got
he'd giggle
hysterical.
at his own story,
He
which
got
is
hysterical at his own stuff.
right.
Someone like you.
Thank you. The thing I could never understand, though, you're talking about an Italian student. A true story with me is all the years I've been teaching, all the years I would be teaching in the public school system, and even in college, CUNY, but mostly in the public school system, my name would be in the room, Frankel, F-R-A-N-K-E-L. You know what I'm gonna say?
No.
No.
I told you this, yeah. So is this a repeat performance?
Like TV.
Should I keep this lecture for the summer,
Reruns.
summer reruns?
I never heard of that.
Okay, so the name is up in the front of the room. And the Italian kids would call me Franco. Why?
Generals.
And the black kids would call me Franklin, I'm sorry, Franklin. And I didn't know whether I was coming or going. And I couldn't understand it.
Who am I?
Now, the kids could read, some kids couldn't read that well, but the name is up on the thing, Frankel. What couldn't, and I would say to them, what's this say? Yeah, it says Franklin. So the kids had it in their mind. I could understand Franklin because PS40 was on near Franklin Avenue and that's part of Staten Island. Maybe a lot of the kids came from that. But at any rate, where were we?
Dorothy Dandridge.
Oh, Dorothy Dandridge, gosh. So unfortunately, she passed away.
Is that how she did with the drugs? Is that how she?
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
well, they said it was something else, but she had a chip
Well, of
bone
course,
and
they're
it
gonna
went
say
to her
it's
heart.
something else.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
you know.
Yeah, but it was because of her because of the illnesses, she had to take painkillers, got a little bit of. But again, that doesn't matter. The thing is, she was frustrated. She was not happy with the way things would go, and as I said, she's right to push the envelope. She was doing what so many people did, you know, civil rights, if not just civil rights, give me the respect and the dignity that other actresses and singers had. They wanted her for, let's see, they wanted her for a great movie. She was not in Porgy and Bess. No. They wanted her to do it, and she didn't, and she turned it down, you know, in those days because she didn't want to be typecast. But, you know, you think about that. Her timing wasn't good.
Was she in Raisin in the Sun?
I don't know if she was in A Raisin in the Sun. Does anyone know? You gotta help me. No.
Diana Sands was in that.
Diana Carroll? Diana Sands.
Sands.
Okay.
She passed away.
All right, so the bottom line is she was a great, she sang well.
Yeah.
She felt she was as good a singer as anyone else, and she was competing with a contemporary of hers, Lena Horne. It was a great song.
Same color.
Same issues, you know, light skin, beautiful, and in those days, that was a concern. The studios wanted her. It's amazing. They wanted her to be light skinned. It's better to be light skinned. You know, that's the way they were thinking. Just like the great, as I said, the great Hollywood producers and owners of movie companies, all the great ones, MGM, Metro, Mayer, from Fox, Paramount, big shots, they all came into the movie industry, turn of the century, and they changed their names for the most part, but they all came in, and I think I told you this, but they came in from, a lot of them were in the Lower East Side, the first wave of immigration, they came in, and they always had, every one of them had an interest in the film industry, but not so much in the performance end, but more in the technology end in those days, what film could do, and they, one of the big shots, I forgot which one, sold reels of film in a little store in downtown New York, Lower East Side. Actually sold as a new thing, up and coming thing. It's like going into that famous camera store in New York City.
Willoughby?
M&J, J&M. I'm really great with J&R. The one that closes on Fridays and Sundays.
That's on 33rd Street.
Right. So you can imagine
H&M. No, no, no.
H&L,
That's a bogus
H&M,
B&J.
There's even a store down here on, there's a store as I drive home on the road, this street here, which is Manor Road. You can get great sandwiches at H&M, M&J, M&J.
Oh, that one, yeah.
A&J?
I don't know, it's one of them. I'm asking you if I knew. Yes, dear. B&H, thank you. Hold on one second. Hello? We'll give her a second. That happens. This isn't Broadway where a person comes out and says, shut off your phone. But if this continues, I'll hire you to. Okay, so here's the deal. So all of these big shots who made it to the big movie companies, and we're talking, they started out in the film industry doing very small things, something that they never really thought that they'd become moguls. I love that word.
Moguls?
Is a mogul, does that come from, could that be a Jewish oriented? Mogul. But no, that's used. They use that in a big shot. A kanasha. A successful somebody. But every single one of them wanted to be in the film industry. And it turned out to be that some of them became so wealthy and famous, forget the wealth, famous because of the timing. My theory, and it's your theory too, I don't own anything that I say. I've heard it from other people, and when I do own something, I'll tell you. Timing is everything. Who you know helps, but the timing's gotta be there first. Then who you know, because if the timing's good and you're not good, whether they know you or not, it's a bad reflection on the person that's giving you the boost. And think about that. So when I hear kids in college and teaching broadcasting, radio and TV, I used to have office hours. They would come in, listen, would you get me an intern? So I could get them internships. This is, I said, but I would always say, you got the internship, now it's up to you to make it happen. Not by how much you know, learn on the internship, learn in school, and also show up and give the person who has hired you or took you in as an intern to make sure that you follow through with their directions. So some of them would say to me, what happens if they ask us to go for coffee? I would say, you do it once. If it becomes an everyday thing, very nicely say to them, I don't mind getting you coffee, but my professor, me, told us that, that's not why I'm here. Put it on me. Don't you do it, because a lot of people would say that that's disrespectful. And I got one person calling up. He said, what are you telling them? It's one of the things. I said, well, listen, if that's one of the things, that's not what I want them to do. So I took the rap for that, which is what I had to do. All right, so moguls. Every one of them went into some aspect of the business, and we all know the rest of the story. They became a conglomerate. All of the movie people, they were all Jewish for the most part. I'm talking about the heads of the companies. Every one of them, just about. Not that it doesn't matter, but it just goes to show you that they got in on the ground floor, and they learned by doing. They actually learned at a time when this was blossoming. Same thing with the recording industry. Same thing. Yeah, we got to shut that floor. Thank you. Which is what I have here. We talk about music after World War II. After World War II, African roots is urban music with heavy, insistent beats. After World War II, there was always jazz. There was all kinds of jazz in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and there were a lot of people who put music together, who did music, who were from all ethnicities. But to understand the beat of the city, the changes that have occurred with the music industry, it was white owners of music companies, and a lot of the new people singing were black and African Americans. And a lot of the content of music was a certain sound that in the early beginnings, rhythm and blues, which was the first part of rock and roll. Rhythm and blues, country rock, rhythm and blues, country rock, and we also had pop music. Blend that together, and now you have what is called rock and roll. Now I can prove it to you. I don't have to prove it to you, but Buddy Holly. How many of you remember Buddy Holly? I hope everyone, because he remembers all of you. So, he's passed away. Buddy Holly would have, it was called Rockabilly.
Yes.
And he was creative enough, he wasn't Jewish, but he was creative enough to be able to create this sound that was country, mix it in with some pop beats, and it was country rock. It was really the beginnings of rock and roll. Also, R&B, rhythm and blues. You had a lot of the Ella Fitzgerald, and that was jazz, you know. And it didn't see
Billie
any,
Holiday.
there was Billie Holiday, and you didn't see color or ethnicity or anything else. You did see color and ethnicity for some of these big stars when they appeared in Harlem. They were allowed to appear, they were in Harlem, at the famous Impala, and yet, no matter where they were allowed to perform, if they wanted to stay, some of them were not from New York, they came from out of town. They had to go to a place that didn't say you couldn't hang out in that hotel, but they knew where to go and where not to go. And this was happening in the 50s. Ball players who went to spring training after the Jackie Robinson years would go to spring training to some of these places in Florida, and some of in the 50s, and some of the places where the ball team stayed, they couldn't stay there. So no matter how much progress you were making then, it was something that wasn't connected. There was no connection made to what's wrong with this picture. And of course, it took many years after that. So the thing with music is that, let me just read this. After the war, when the term race music was seen as offensive race music. Can anybody share that? What do we mean by race music, offensive?
Black and white.
Black music, race music. Give you an example. I'll give,
Rap?
no, not yet, no, that's much later.
Motown.
Little Richard,
Oh.
Tutti Frutti, and all that. And this guy came on stage, his hair was slicked down, he wore makeup, he was way ahead of the game. And he's, you know, Tutti Frutti, screaming, yelling, and was a good piano player. That was Jerry Lee Lewis. But this guy played the piano too, and he was good. But, yes,
I have a friend that used to go to the Coventry Tabernacle in Brooklyn, and Little Richard had become religious.
yes, this was later
He
on.
put on a suit, he got a haircut, and he came into the church, and I knew he was coming, I was all excited, I went there, and he spoke very well, and he said he was giving up, his friends thought he was boring now, but he was giving up all those other things that he did, but he went back.
Yeah, well, you see,
But
they,
he's a very interesting person.
he is, not just,
Right.
they started in gospel. They were gospel singers. Aretha Frankel, her father was very much, very big.
Ray Charles.
Ray
Ray Charles was in gospel.
So it started in church with gospel music. That's why that's the term race music. Now, when you take that sound and you go to New York City, to the people who made record albums and performers and arrangers, they didn't want to touch it at first because it represented a certain anger, frustration, hostility, rebellion, until a movie that was rebellious in many respects, but the rock and roll singer was white. Does any Rock Around the Clock was a song, Blackboard Jungle. And it took a few films like this to realize that this music was in fact becoming very much part of the mainstream of music. And it was the kids, my age group, believe it or not, I'm up there. I'm close to 30, so I grew up on pop music and classical music, but rock and roll I can relate to. And my friends, we just jumped at it. It was terrific. And went to the, I'm going to talk to you, let you go in a second. Went to the Fox Theater in Brooklyn when I was kids. We had to go with a group, because God forbid we went alone. And we went to the rock and roll shows. By that time, You had black and white. You talk about a mix. Everyone was there for the music, for the excitement of the stars, you know, and the shows, whether it was the Maury the K show or Alan Freed, the stars were a mixed bag. So that music made it into the mainstream and became very successful. Even Columbia Records held out. They didn't want to be associated, Columbia Records, with any, no, they wanted to be the pop, middle America, wonderful music, and they did great. Pat Boone's of the world, Doris Day, but even Pat Boone from Columbia would do, and those of you who were in my class remember me saying this, even Pat Boone would pick up on the race music and do his version of it. He did Tutti Frutti.
Oh,
Yes, Pat Boone, with the white bucks.
Yes.
Tutti Frutti. Oh, the Frutti. Tutti Frutti. He took out the high screeching, and they were called cover records. And a lot of people picked up on it. A lot of the Columbia record people picked up on it. Johnny Ray, of course, was a pop, but Johnny Ray had that urgency, just like the rock and roll, early rock and roll or urban stars. Now, you had some.
I was going to say American Bandstand
Oh,
was very popular, and that brought a lot of people together. So you
At
had
first-
blacks and whites, and they were all dancing and listening and singing.
all right, but not at first on American.
No,
Bandstand.
it came a little
American
later.
Bandstand was lily white,
Yes.
and even had more girls than boys because there was a girls' high school across the street. And they knew if they brought in the girls' high school students, there would be no fights, no craziness, and they took and then it got to be ridiculous after a while. And a lot of the people in the Philadelphia area was saying, you know, why not go to the regular, let's go to the other high schools, let's get a mix, and that's when it changed. Believe me, they heard from a lot of people in Philadelphia. But the whole point was that Dick Clark, take a look at Dick Clark, he was playing black music, he was playing rock and roll, he was in on the ground floor. And as a matter of fact, during the payola days, he got pinched too. But he was not a radical looking guy. He was communicating with the teenagers. These are your sons, daughters, and grandchildren who, you know, he was on every day after school, and it was good, clean fun. It was dancing. And when they came down on the people in music who were taking bribes to play a song, he didn't take bribes. He would be told by record companies, we're going to put this song on your show, and we'll take care of all the expenses, and we'll do this, we'll do that, blah, blah, blah. So it was a bribe, and he played it down. He also made so much money in the early days, he bought into ABC Paramount. So he had a tremendous amount of stock, and the FCC and the Federal Trade Commission told him, no, you either do your show and get away from these other interests, or take the interest and stop doing the show. So that's how he decided to do the show. And the rest, of course, is history. Who else had a, yes?
Yeah, NBC was the parent company of RCA Victor Records.
Yes.
Where were they in this, you know, you said
Well,
Columbia was
I'm going
first.
to tell you, NBC was, RCA Victor was known many years before Sarnoff as classical music and highbrow stuff and very cultured stuff. But eventually, everybody needed to get in to make money. The bottom line, you had to try new things, and even RCA tried new things. But they went with more of the pop stars. Same thing with Columbia. And then the smart thing, the smart thing to do when you started to do so well with certain types of music, you broke the company up into different names, different types of music went to different companies that were all owned by one company.
What was that man who was on Sundays, used to cheer up everybody and play and entertain? It was on
Edson.
for a long time,
Ed
that
Sullivan?
program. No, I don't mean Ed Sullivan, it was someone else. He was on Sundays. Can you remember? I
He
can't
cheered
see.
people up.
Yeah, he was just wonderful.
Lawrence Welk?
Lawrence Welk, yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's what I used to
I was gonna say Lawrence Welk. See, when you said Lawrence, I was gonna say Lawrence Welk, but when you said cheer people up.
I enjoy him. I really
I'm just kidding. He was unbelievable. He was, no, that's Ed Sullivan.
And him too.
Lawrence Welk, it was an upbeat show for my parents' crowd. Not for me, I must say, that doesn't mean that it's not a right, wrong thing, I just couldn't relate to them. And he would come out and talk like this. We're going to do a great song now, and this song now is, we're gonna have the Lennon Sisters come out and sing. That's a wonderful song, and he danced.
Topo Gigio.
Well, that was Ed Sullivan.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
Ed Sullivan would be. I hear my good friend Topo Gigio. And Topo Gigio, you go over to Topo Gigio. You go over to Topo Gigio, whatever the hell his name was, and he talked to the puppet. And the puppet, oh, Eddie! Oh, Eddie, I love you! I was embarrassed. Now he walked on like, I don't know how to be loose. I'm not supposed to be loose. I'm a stiff and making millions of dollars. But that was it. Okay, enough of my performing, because I can do very poor imitations of everything. Just put that in your pipe and smoke. All right, so here we go. Let's bring this back to what I want to say. I mean, what we're here for. I mean, we're here for a lot of things.
What's the class again?
What's the name of this topic? What's the name of this episode?
Well, my episode is up in the air because I left my folder at home. We were going to continue like we did the last 2 weeks with famous Jewish people in show business, but outside of show business, we're going to go back to the 30s and 20s. And that was the next part of it, but I can't find my notes. I can wing it, but I'd rather have something.
I just need a title for the show. For this.
Fun with Dave.
Winging it.
Yeah, Fun with Dave, that's a good one.
I don't want to think of that.
No,
That's
no,
no, I appreciate it because we have to be
It's like he
educational.
said.
So give it a title.
All right, let's give it a title.
The 20s and 30s?
No.
Is it music we're talking
Pop
about?
music and pop music and film. Pop music and film. That's all. If anybody questions, just let them come to see me.
It's his last day.
It's my last day anyway. Aren't you glad? Yeah, I know.
No.
No, I'm just kidding. All right, so here we go.
Tuesday.
Tuesday we talk.
Tuesday, that's my class. That's it. So after the war, when the term race music was seen as offensive, the name rhythm and blues was used to describe recordings marketed predominantly to urban African Americans. Again, showing Billboard magazine's influence on the music world. Editor Jerry Wexler, this is a Jewish guy, doesn't matter, but he happened to coined the term rhythm and blues in 1948. And then he went on to become a major record industry player from the 1950s to the 80s. And he produced big names like Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, the Allman Brothers, Chris Connor, Dusty Springfield, he's a white, Led Zeppelin, Wilson Pickett, and Bob Dylan. So here's another guy on the, not only the ground floor, but really the ground floor. And he worked his way in when I opened the lesson, the lecture. It's not who you know, it's timing. Here's the timing, and here's the ear. These are people who had ears. They didn't necessarily couldn't play an instrument. A lot of them couldn't read a lick of music. Didn't matter. It's a feel. It's a sound. And the way the sound was changing, it changed for Jerry Wexler. And then there was Burt Bacharach. Now, whether he's, to this day, it doesn't matter. It's a Jewish class. I mean, it's not a Jewish class, but it's a class talking about, I would assume he is Jewish, but.
He is.
He is, okay. Only because, I guess he is.
He is.
I know his wives were not.
Angie Dickinson was one of Angie.
Unless she was, I don't know.
Angie Dickinson? No, I don't think so.
But he, and Hal David was, Hal David, his writer, Hal David was a lyricist. with some of the greatest music, I think, in history. We play it down, but it's on. I'll give you what the world needs now is love.
Oh, that's,
No.
The look of love. He wrote a lot of songs for the Carpenters. He wrote a lot of songs for Dionne Warwick. He put Dionne Warwick on the map. He wrote the music, and Hal David wrote the lyrics. And so here are two. No, not Downtown. That sounds like it, doesn't it? That's a guy from England, Tony Hatch. And Tony Hatch was the English Burt Bacharach. Tony Hatch wrote some great things, and one of the Petula Clark was one of the people he wrote with.
Oh, yes.
So you had that same music. They both, Tony Hatch and Burt Bacharach, were musicians from A to Z. I mean, it wasn't just their ear; they were trained to play the piano, to play music, to write music, to arrange music. A lot of our arrangers for movies and for the theater, of course, if you name one of the great, he's still around. He was on, he did West Side Story, was his first effort. Not Larry, oh boy, help me. Help
Jerry
me.
Robbins.
Well, Jerry Robbins was a big player in that. More of the dancing, the choreography.
West Side Story?
He did West Side Story, he did Company, and all 100 million different. Geez, I thought I was bad.
Didn't Sondheim?
Sondheim, thank you. That's all.
Oh, is it? In Sondheim?
He didn't do West Side Story.
Yes, he had a part, he had a part
He
in
did,
it.
he did the lyrics.
Yeah, he did.
Sondheim, I think.
He was a young guy. He might have been a gopher, but he did have a tremendous amount of respect for Bernstein. And he took him on as an intern. That's the story. And Sondheim actually did throw some lyrics for him. That's many years ago. And look where he is today. So I'm glad you brought that name.
Well, I learned that at the U of T.
Well, okay, so what do you want me to do?
Yes,
UFT gets a party because he learned
That's
something.
right.
Well, I have as much respect for the UFT as a very good program, too. All right, so, yes,
Besides Leonard Bernstein, you have Yasha Heifetz
yes.
and Daniel Barenboim.
Wow.
Barrymore?
No, Barenboim, pianist.
Oh, pianist, we're talking classical, yes.
Yeah, classical.
Okay, they're all over the place. They, meaning the Jew, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And amazing number of people, turn of the century, came here, needed to make a living, and education, of course, was one of the first things our parents and grandparents pushed us to do. Education, go to school, learn the language, learn anything you can. Yes?
George Gershwin.
Oh my God, not even, I mean, just unbelievable.
And Ira.
But George was a typical example of the coming to America. Parents came, and he just had it in him. He's another genius. He's definitely a genius in my book. How could you come up with music like that? Both of them.
Barbara Streisand.
Irving Berlin.
Yeah.
Irving
Leonard
Caesar.
Bernstein.
Bernstein.
Caesar. Right? Who else? Name them. Let's go.
I don't know anyone.
Dave Frankel.
Hey, Frankel, thank you. You don't have to say. No, that's, look, I thank you for that. It's very, very nice, but you don't need to.
Look at the big smile.
All right, so, in every walk of life, big deal. You don't need me to know that, say this, and you know that especially as we turn the century, turn of the century, these were people who cultivated their abilities, and some of them were very, very well trained. Others just luckily got into the right place at the right time. A whole bunch of writers at the Brill Building on 40, maybe one of you can help me, 43rd? Yeah, something like that. A building where it was just places where composers and producers all hung out. And people would walk in with a song, one of which was Carole King.
I was gonna say beautiful.
That's what Beautiful's about. But it wasn't just Carole King, it was word of mouth. Carole King told Neil Sedaka. Neil Sedaka told this one. And they all were the same age.
Yeah, another
Well,
one.
Paul Anka came in from Canada,
Canada, I
and he
know.
was connected to some other company
He
that got
wrote
him going.
a lot
Oh,
of
incredible.
Simon and Garfunkel.
Right, they hung out there too. So it was called the Brill Building Singers. Yes.
Tin Pan Alley,
Yes.
how did that get its name, or, how was that involved?
I'm not too sure, and I should know the name. I should know the name, but I know that it was where the Broadway
songwriters?
show, the songwriters, it wasn't in the Brill Building area, but it was definitely around Broadway where there were publishers. And that's what the difference is, songwriters and publishers. You could write a song, and I'm a publisher. You come to me, and I got a song. Well, so do a million other people. Hurry up, tell me a song. And I'm listening to it, and they didn't even tape record it. They just
Remember, they
listened.
had people playing piano, they're playing the song.
That was in another room.
Right.
You would sing the song, literally, with no voice. Okay, thank you, goodbye. And if he liked it, he would send you to another room. I let the arranger pick up on this.
Some of the great composers thought of that.
That's right, and that's what the Brill Building was about too, with composers from the 50s and 60s. A lot of them were Jewish. So Tin Pan Alley, that would be something we could, get the specific, I read it somewhere, I just don't remember, the specific name or the definition of what Tin Pan Alley is, but I can tell you, it was definitely in the Broadway area.
Yeah.
So,
Tin Pan, maybe it has something to do with beggars, I don't know.
I don't know, there's so many things.
Yeah, I don't
It's
know.
something I kinda should know, and I
I
I-
learned it,
I-
I forgot it.
I tell my
Maybe it's a
students.
Dixieland term, or
Right.
music.
That's true, I tell my students from the day one, no matter what, college, high school, public school, I will always say that I know a lot of stuff because I have a great interest in this. Not in this course I have interest in, but that's not my specialty. But in radio, broadcasting, music, theater, I know a lot about it, but I don't know everything. And I don't profess to know everything, I would never do that. And then what I know, what I did know 10 years ago, I don't know now because I forgot. So I can't win.
You want me to read it?
Please.
It's only one paragraph.
We got it,
okay.
we got
All right, so Tin Pan Alley is the name given to the collection of New York City music publishers and songwriters who dominated the popular music of the United States in the late 19th century and early 20th century. The name originally referred to a specific place, West 28th Street between 5th and 6th Avenue in Manhattan, and a plaque on the sidewalk of 28th between Broadway and 6th commemorates it. And then it goes on.
That's good.
Thank you.
Doesn't
I can tell you why it's called Tin Pan.
Yeah.
What is that, a computer?
Does it say why it's called Tin Pan
I'll
Alley?
look it up and let you know.
It's amazing.
The iPhone.
He's gonna find out.
Oh, the origins of
The
the name
iPhone.
Tin Pan Alley are unclear. One account claims that it was a derogatory reference to the sound of many pianos resembling the banging of tin pans. Another version claims the name stemmed from the way that songwriters modified their pianos so that they had a percussion sound. After many years, the term came to refer to the U.S. music industry in general. So it's mainly the sound of the piano.
Now, let's look up one more because I gave you the definition. I know it well, I have some books on it. But just let's get a clearer definition of the Brill Building music.
Brill, B-R-I-L.
B-R-I-L-L. That's the name of the building, but people who hung out there, it came up later, much later, the Amos and Andy show. Was very much, yes.
You want the Brill building?
Hold up,
Finish
hold up a
that.
minute, let me finish. Amos and Andy on radio was acceptable totally, because you didn't see them. And they were white actors, wearing, for publicity reasons, they wore blackface, but they didn't have to. Whereas Amos and Andy, when it went to TV, was even a better show, because they used the real people.
Yeah, I remember that.
Harlem actors, and I remember loving the show. It was so enjoyable, so funny. And after that, after the show had its run, they wanted to syndicate it, and that's when the NAACP and the other organizations got together and said, no, it's too stereotypical of black people who we consider, or the world considers to be lazy, or they don't work, they
But
don't do this.
but I
And
don't
we can
remember
argue that all
derogatory.
day.
But I don't remember that show being that derogatory, but I know they dressed, I remember them dressing in suits.
Their accents, their accents.
I don't know what they
The
did for
way
a
they
living,
talk,
and I
the
don't.
way they talk, and also,
Yeah, I guess.
Step in the
But-
bedroom.
Andy,
Very
Some of the skits.
stereotypical.
Andy worked, he was a cab driver.
he was a
Yeah,
cab
okay,
driver,
I
and
just-
Amos
yeah.
never worked.
Yeah.
Amos never worked.
And
I
then
didn't
there was
know
a
that.
step and fetch it character who
Yeah.
blamed,
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
as innocent as that was,
What was wrong with that?
remember now, we're talking the sixties.
Well, what about, what's his name, Al Jolson and Mammy and.
Well, that was attacked later on.
Yeah, that was
But at that
exactly-
time,
Right.
this was showbiz. This was people paid to see this. If you're paying to see it, nobody cared.
How long
Till
was that on,
later.
Amos and Amy? How many?
Well, it was on radio for
No, I
about
mean on TV, how long was
very
it?
short time,
Very
about
short,
5
right?
years. Go ahead, we got you. Speak.
If you wanna see it, you can see it right now on YouTube. I've seen a
Yeah,
lot
oh
of
yeah,
them
you can
recently.
probably
Oh,
get
it's
it,
fantastic.
yeah.
Amos
I was
and Andy?
curious, yeah, if
I
you
have
look
to
on
try that,
YouTube.
yeah.
Amos and Andy, you can't watch it on television. Bill Cosby bought the rights.
Right.
Okay?
But you can see it on
And
YouTube.
he won't allow anyone to see because he thought it was offensive.
I
Yeah.
saw it not.
She saw it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And
By the
it's
way,
funny.
He doesn't have the rights on YouTube.
It's
The
funny.
yeah, it doesn't have the rights on YouTube. YouTube, I have to give it a plug, I have no stock in it. I have no stock in me, so why would I have stock in it?
Yeah.
So, YouTube is fantastic.
Yeah, it is, it's great.
Because it doesn't have to be stuff you can't see anymore, you can just see things.
Yep.
Some of it's not fun to see, some of it's pretty horrible. But it's really, it took the place of the Museum of Broadcasting, TV and Radio, it took the place of newspapers, it takes the place of, I guess it can be good and bad, but I enjoy it for something like this,
Yeah.
to be able to see.
I'm gonna try it.
Amos and
Yeah, I'm
Andy.
gonna
Sat for a couple of
Yeah.
hours.
You can see what I'm talking about. But that was what it was. It was taken off the air, and anything like it.
Beulah?
Beulah.
Oh.
That was a wonderful show.
Ethel Waters.
Now,
Right.
Ethel Waters is Beulah. What is Beulah? She's a housekeeper.
Right.
And a maid. So when the 60s came about, and the civil rights amendments were put into place, it was considered not politically correct. And that's another term we use today.
But yet they had Hazel.
Hazel and
The
Oh.
white maid.
Alice, the one from Brady Bunch.
Yes. So it had-
And that was later.
Yeah, it
So
was
they
later.
finally, maybe they eased up. That's a good question. Did they ease up on it? Perhaps they did. Look, the bottom line is, if a show's number one,
No, she said.
and it's got some of these,
Hazel was white.
if the show is number one, and they've got some of these people who, would not be allowed to do a show, and it eased up 10 years later, that's fine. But, when I talk about this in school, what did the Cosby Show bring to bear to the audiences? Here was a professional black
He
family.
was a doctor
Oh.
and not a.
She was a lawyer.
She was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And I would tell students, even at Kingsborough, when I was teaching this in college, well, actually more in Kingsborough, I would see, and it was I always had mixed classes, and I would say, how many of you grew up in an area, in an urban area, where you actually knew a doctor lived on the street? And a few hands went up. Oh, there was a doctor on the street who was a doctor, a black doctor. And did you go to him? No, we went to New York to another doctor. But the point is, that was what the Cosby Show is able to do, to show you that there is a couple of steps up from what we were used to seeing, and that whole era is gone, except we can see some of it on YouTube. Look, the Hour Gang comedies.
Oh,
What's
yeah.
his
Stymie.
Stymie.
My friend mentioned
Buckley.
Molly Goldberg. What about
Right.
Molly Goldberg?
I know.
Her show was a Jewish oriented
I
show.
understand that, and they didn't have any issue until unfortunately, the McCarthy hearings. One of the
Right.
gentleman who played the husband was looked at as possibly an enemy to our country, which of course is so ridiculous.
Yeah.
But
He committed suicide.
yes,
Oh.
yes. Couldn't get a gig.
Couldn't get it.
Couldn't get a gig. Any other, so what do we have? Yeah, thank you. I want that, because this is important. Let's get the definition of the Brill
All right,
Building.
so the Brill Building, located at 1619 Broadway in the heart of New York's Music District, is a name synonymous with an approach to songwriting that changed the course of music. The Brill Building sound came out from the stretch along Broadway between 49th and 53rd Street. The Brill Building, named after the Brill brothers, whose clothing store was located at the street level and would later buy it. Okay, and that they go on. But here's something interesting. The Brill Building in the early 60s was a classic model of vertical integration. There you could write a song or make the rounds of publishers until someone bought it. Then you could go to another floor and get a quick arrangement lead sheet for $10, get some copies made at the duplication office, book an hour at a demo studio, hire some of the musicians and singers that hung around, and finally cut a demo of the song, all in the same building. Then you can take it around to the building, to the record companies, publishers, artists, managers, and even artists themselves. If you made a deal there were radio promoters available. And three of the producers was Don Kirshner and all the music, George Shadow Morton, and Phil Spector. Okay, and then they got a list of songwriters, but that's basically it.
MCA.
But you said the singers and the piano players were hanging around.
Yeah, that's the whole building.
Now Carol, if you see the show, brought in with her husband then, who was a great lyricist, but they didn't stay together. But they started hitting the music business with songs of women, girls in love and losing their husband. And he had a good ear for that. The Shirelles, they wrote a lot of songs for the Shirelles. Will You Love Me Tomorrow? And the lyrics back then were somewhat, if you thought about it, somewhat risque in the 60s. Will you love me tomorrow? Will be tonight, you'll be mine. Tomorrow, will you love me tomorrow? And I went out with a few women.
Will you love me tomorrow?
They said that before we got together. And I said, point blank, I have no idea. Listen, we're looking at the clock, and it's time to go. I thank you so much for 3 minutes of enjoyment. Say hello to your teacher, and I thank you for the taping. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Good afternoon.
Thank you very